I want to just think. Okay. If I click here. Okay. So just before we start, I'll tell you a little bit about who I am. I've got a different hair color. I'm going white. So who am I? So yes, I'm Fiona and I run the Kids Club English website and teacher membership. And it's mainly really teachers that are not using course books but like teaching through stories, songs, games, craft, and drama. So that's when I started teaching English through storybooks. I looked at all these other ways that I knew were really engaging for kids, and tried to get the language in through that way. So that's where this comes from. So I've made a lot of resources for teaching young learners and very young learners in these ways, and I run a teacher membership and community. Okay, so today I hope I can share some simple and practical ways that you can help kids acquire more language, and through these different things that I love. So songs, stories, games, craft, and drama. So one of the things I do in my membership are these sort of show and tells each week. So I'm kind of hoping that in this session, what I'm going to do is just share some quick practical activities in each of these different areas that you'll be able to take away and use in your own classrooms. I'm not really able to see the chat, but maybe if there are any questions or any comments throughout the session,
Yes,
just interrupt.
we'll let you know.
Just interrupt, okay?
Absolutely.
Yes, let's start off thinking first of all about language learning objectives. So I divide these into two groups, really. First of all, I think about language to learn. So this is where the vocabulary definitely comes in, where we've got an explicit focus. So you're conducting activities, any activity in your classroom where your young learners need to understand or produce language in order to complete the task that you've given them, in order to complete that activity. But I also think about language that they can acquire. So what do I mean by that? I mean that there's an implicit focus. So I'm not necessarily expecting that children are going to produce this language, but I'm being very intentional about the language I use in my teacher talk and in the way I conduct craft activities and the way I do storytelling, so that the children are getting exposed to it. Okay. Why? Well, because you'll know from your own experience that especially when you're teaching children, they're all at different stages in their language development. And I think if we restrict it too much to just that vocabulary item or that grammar point that you're trying to teach, you're not giving the exposure to that bigger language that some children will be ready to acquire, and they will start producing it. And for the children who are not quite there yet, they're getting that exposure so that in the future, down the line, when they do come across that language again, they're going to be much more receptive and much more able to then incorporate it into their own language repertoire. So yeah, basically I'm saying make it available. All right, so we're going to look at some ways that you can kind of make that bigger language available to them and help them acquire that bigger language. Okay, so let's start with songs. So am I going to think about this in terms of why? And I'm sure this is all familiar to you. You probably use a lot of songs in your classrooms too, because they're catchy. They kind of stick in your head. They're memorable. So the language is embedded in them. So they're really useful, but they don't always contain the language that you want to focus on, perhaps at that particular moment. And sometimes they're a little bit too difficult. So we adapt them. Okay, so I want to just, I'm going to stop sharing my screen just now, and we're going to demonstrate a couple here. So basically, simple songs. Songs, think about songs that you already know, that your children already know, more importantly. One of them is the Frere Jacques, or it has different names. So um, um, so any vocabulary point is perfect. So even if it's just colors, you know, red and yellow, pink and blue, pink and blue. What's your favorite color? What's your favorite color? I like blue. How about you? Okay, so you can do it like that. But as I said, any vocabulary point. And usually when I do, I'll have like, so this is what I've got to hand. I've got some closed vocabulary point cards here. So generally what I would do is I would have the children in a circle and I'd shuffle the cards like this and get the kids to tell me, Fiona, stop. And then be like, oh, okay, a shirt. We've got a shirt. And then I put that down the circle. Jumper, I've got a t-shirt there, and then we've got, I don't know, jacket. And then we sing the song. So this, sorry, I forgot to say this. First, before we launch into singing it, I tend to just get them to follow the actions. So you can't see my knees here, but I would be clapping my knees. So the, 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 okay, so in this case, so they would start to follow along with the clapping and get the rhythm and, you know, the coordination with what to do with their hands. And then we would start introducing the vocabulary items. So shirt and jumper, shirt and jumper, t-shirt and jacket, t-shirt and jacket. What are you wearing? What are you wearing? I'm wearing a jumper. I'm wearing a jumper. And then we would repeat it again, but then I'd get one of the children to tell me. So they'd be, I'm wearing a t-shirt. Or they could say the negative, you know, like I'm not wearing a jacket or something like that. But of course, that could be anything. That could be food. Could be, you know, uh, carrots and apples or something. And then what's your favorite food? It could be transport, by bus, by bike, by bus, by bike, by car, by plane. And then you'll laugh, actually, why was I by plane? Because then you could ask, you know, like, you know, how do you go to school? How do you go to school? Imagine if some child told you they went to school by plane, but there we go. Maybe some children do. I doubt it. Anyway, so adapting the song for whatever language you're wanting to work on, and that'll make it more memorable for them. Another example is there's a tune called Jimmy Crack Corn. And say you've been telling a story, like I don't know if you know the enormous turnip story, you know, where the man's trying to pull a big turnip out of the ground and has to get, you know, first it's a man comes, then there's a woman, then there's a boy, then there's a girl, then there's a dog. And you want to recycle and give kids more exposure to that language, well, put it into the song. So this one you could have, now let me think about it. I can't remember how it goes now. Um, now is it trying to remember this one. I see so the man, okay, so the man sees, this is how it goes. So it's like the man sees a woman. Okay, so it'd be like the man sees a woman, come and help. The man sees a woman, come and help. The man sees a woman, come and help. Pull the turnip, pull. Okay, but just really just looking for ways that you can use the language you want to practice, but put it into a song. So I'm sure that you know lots of songs that from your own childhood even, and just looking for ways to insert that in there. Okay, so I'm going to go and share my screen again. And we'll go back to this. Right. Okay. So we've got some, just to summarize those ideas. So we've got the Frere Jacques song, red and yellow, what's your favorite color? Socks and trousers, what are you wearing? By bus on foot, how do you get to school? Okay. So some ideas with stories now. Stories. So I love using stories. For lots of reasons. I'm sure you can think of a lot of benefits yourselves. Um, so we've got them in terms of passive learning. So this is where the implicit language focus is coming in again, where they're sitting, they're enjoying the story, and they're hearing the language. But we've also got we can tell the stories in interactive ways, and we can identify opportunities for the kids to be involved. So they could join in with actions for the story, answering questions, naming vocabulary that you can see lots of ways. So we're going to look at a couple of examples now. Okay, I'm going in and out of screen sharing, basically just so you can see bigger on the screen. But first one, look at this one, monkey puzzle. So I wonder if any of you know this one. If you don't, it's one of the Julia Donaldson books. And the Julia Donaldson books are wonderful, but they often include quite complex language. And what I found is that sometimes that means that there's such a long string of language that it's quite difficult for kids to be able to extract kind of chunks of language from that to then be able to acquire. So I tend to simplify the stories in this. So I'll look at the pictures and I'll look at the main storyline, and then I'll think about what language I would like them to hear. So this is me thinking about those implicit language objectives. So if you're not familiar with this one, the basic storyline is that this monkey here loses his mum, and he's lost. And then this butterfly comes along and says that he'll help the monkey, or she'll help the monkey. The butterfly will help the monkey, and takes the monkey to these different animals, and they're not his mum, obviously, and until eventually they find the mum. So let's just look at one example. Let's see. So, like for example, here, it's a very big book to share. So, I mean, if you look at this language, hush, little monkey, don't you cry. I'll help you find her, said Butterfly. Let's have a think. How big is she? She's big, said the monkey. Bigger than me. Bigger than you? Then I've seen your mum. Come, little monkey, come, come, come. That's lovely. It's beautiful. But I change it so that I can include more repetition throughout the story. So in this case, the butterfly would go, I know, come with me. Or I know your mum, come with me. Is this your mum? No, 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 that's not my mum. That's an elephant. My mum isn't big. My mum hasn't got a trunk. My mum has a tail. Okay, and so I'm changing this to include sentences with has got, and these repeated useful phrases. That's not, my mum is, okay, and I'm going to repeat that through the story. So again, the butterfly would go, oh, I know your mum, come with me. Is this your mum? No, 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 that's not my mum, that's a snake. So you get the idea, but so adapting your storytelling and thinking about what language you want the children to be able to hear. And of course, with that one, some of those phrases you can get the children to start joining in with quite easily. That's right, yeah. So just seeing the comment in the chat there, yeah, they describe the animal they meet until the monkey finds his mum. Yeah, it's lovely. Yeah, do you want to see? There's the end. So yes, like thinking about how you can incorporate that exposure to that language. Maybe you could get the kids to be joining in with like, I know, come with me. Is this your mum? And then they can join in with, no, 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 that's not my mum. But they might not be at the stage if they're very young learners for knowing, those whole sentences. My mum hasn't got, my mum has got, like they might not be able to produce that, but if you're intentional about exposing them to that language, they're going to be much more likely to be able to acquire it instead of just the isolated vocabulary that you might focus on. Because obviously, you could focus on animals with that book, but they get so much more if you think about it in that way. Um, Another story I just want to show you here is Go Away Big Green Monster. Do any of you know this one? I don't know if you tell me in the chat if you know this story. This is another one that's quite a big hit with my kids. Um, yes. Okay, good. So this story actually doesn't need that much adapting in terms of language because the language is quite simple and a lot of storybooks are, and you don't need to adapt the words. But there are often opportunities where you can get more repetition in there and you can give the kids more exposure to useful language. So, for example, in this one, we've got, Big Green Monster has got big yellow eyes, a long bluish green nose, a big red mouth. There's nothing to stop you from going, Big Green Monster has two big yellow eyes. Big Green Monster has got two big yellow eyes and a blue-green nose. Big Green Monster has two yellow eyes, a big green nose, no, a nose, a nose. But you can add in the repetition of the vocabulary there, and of course they're getting the repetition of the has got. But you can also insert phrases, can't you? And this is kind of the interaction bit. So normally when I tell this, I try and get a bit theatrical. I'm honestly quite a shy person, so I don't know, but I think it's different when you're with kids, isn't it? Um, so Big Green Monster has two yellow eyes. Ooh, I'm scared. Are you scared? I'm scared. And the kids will, some will be like, I'm no, and they might be using their first language, and and then you would give it back to them in English. So like, I'm not scared. I'm not scared. I'm like, and then some of them go like, because they want to play along with you. So yeah, I'm scared, and this goes on throughout the book. So let's move on a little bit here. Okay. Oh my goodness! Oh no! Like, so you pretend you can't see, and like, Big Green Monster has go through the whole lot again. I'm not going to read the whole story. And the second half of the book is the body parts start going away. So it's go away to this says two little squiggly ears. I choose not to use squiggly. So it's also thinking about when you tell stories again, even if you're not adapting the whole phrase like I do with Monkey Puzzle, but maybe you don't want to say certain vocabulary items if you you don't think it's that useful for them to acquire that word at that stage. But again, the interaction. So, go away, ears. And then you get them to repeat, like, go away, ears. And, go away, nose, go away, nose. And, and get them to predict, like, okay, what's next? Is it going to be the eyes, the mouth, the teeth? And encourage them to join in. And so, they've got chunks of language with stories and things there as well. So they've got the go away, and you're giving them exposure to that has got, even if they're not ready to, they're not producing that language yet. Okay, so we're going to share my screen again. Okay. Right. Okay, like I say, if you've got any questions or comments, just pop them into the chat. Okay, so what did we look at there? Monkey puzzle. So yeah, those phrases. So I know, come with me, she's got, she can jump, she isn't green. So they're kind of good chunks of language that are beyond the vocabulary. So you don't need to restrict it to just teaching the animals and expecting that's all they can learn from it. And the go away big green monster. So you're not explicitly teaching this is the grammar, adjective before noun, like blue nose, green face. But giving them exposure to it in that way helps them subconsciously make that connection. Okay, so when they do come down the line to studying that grammar, they'll recognize it. Go away, I'm not scared, are you scared? And telling the story multiple times, yeah, like some teachers I've spoken to are worried, that the kids are going to be bored if they've seen the story again. I'm not saying that it's never happened to me where a child's gone, we saw that last week. It does happen, but that doesn't mean you need to kind of give up, because when they realize that they quite enjoy hearing the story again, and they realize that they can kind of they can start to join in more and more, and they can predict what the next page is, and they can recall things, and they enjoy seeing that story again and again. And I think I don't have children myself, but if you have children, then they probably like to hear the same stories again and again. And the same goes for the classroom. It doesn't mean that you have to tell it in exactly the same way. Like, quite often, I'll tell the story the first time with the picture book itself. Um, then the second class, I might tell it with a picture book too itself, but maybe I'm involving the children a bit more. But you can change the format too. So sometimes I'll tell it, I'll retell the story, but from flashcards on the walls, or through a PowerPoint story, or even through a storytelling video. Like, there are loads of them on YouTube, aren't there? And you can just mute the sound and pause and tell the story from the video. And it's a slightly different format, which makes it a bit more interesting. You can tell the story again, but be sitting in a slightly different area of the room, or change the dynamics. You can have them tell the story using puppets or cuddly toys, or drawing the story, or crafts, right? But there's more on that later, okay? Because I often use craft as another way to retell stories. Okay. Um, so, okay, let's move on here. So games next. Okay, so with games, we use lots of games, don't we? um, we can use them sort of with these different purposes, and increasing exposure to that bigger language. So they're having to listen to it. Um, Using games to increase the interaction opportunities so that they get a more either production or exposure to the language. And there are games that do actually encourage that bigger language that goes beyond vocabulary too. Okay. So we're going to look at a few examples here. Okay. So thinking about games where they have to understand vocabulary. So splat games, I've just used that general heading, but I'm sure you'll recognize some of these. So here's an example with flashcards around the room. This is like a PowerPoint, or it could be flashcards on a board with animals. These are flashcards on the floor. Okay, but with all of these type of activities, the children are listening and they're responding. So you're saying something, and then they're either pointing to or they're going to the picture to indicate their understanding. So I suppose what I'm saying is, like, don't restrict it to the individual vocabulary item. It'd be very easy to play these games and just say monkey, and then they point at the monkey, or bear, and they point at the bear, grass, they point at the grass. And try to think about ways where they're still going to understand from that keyword, but you're giving them exposure to the bigger phrase. In that first one, maybe you can tell me in the chat, actually, if you recognize what that story, this is based on a story. The first one, round the room, we've got a picture of a river, a bear, grass. Does anyone know what that story could be? It's a story chant, really. You can let me know if you do in the chat. I'm just going to tell you. So this is from we're going on a bear hunt. Um, so if we're playing like a game where they're listening and pointing to the pictures or going to the pictures, we can retell that story as well. So we're going on a bear hunt. We're going to catch a big one. What a beautiful day. We're not scared. Uh-oh, what's that? It's grass. Long wavy grass. Okay, so they hear grass, they go to grass, but they've also heard all of this other language. So then we go to grass. And, we can't go, and they can join in with this. We can't go over it. We can't go under it. We can go through it. Swishy, swashy, swishy, swashy. And then we're going on a bear hunt again. So that's retelling the entire story, but it's a game where they're having to listen and point to the flashcards. Let's go back. Well, so there's one in the center, so board slam, or maybe you have a different name for it. But yeah, say you'd been, well, not necessarily using the monkey puzzle story, but let's imagine you have used that monkey puzzle story. So instead of saying, parrot, you can be saying, that's not my mum, that's a parrot. And then they go and they touch the parrot. Or some people like using fly swatters as well. It's kind of, I don't actually have, oh, okay, just heard recording stop there. I think I'm still here though. So yeah, like you can incorporate the story language or bigger language. So maybe you're not using the story, but you want to use descriptive language. So it hasn't got legs. What would that be? It's a snake. Okay, so they go to the snake. But give them the full sentence. And this circle splat mats, what I found actually is like sometimes it's nice, especially with the very young learners where they don't um they're they don't fully understand like the concept of competition yet, or or maybe they're too competitive, or like, and it's difficult for them to wait for their turn. These are all skills that they're developing and learning. I find that this works quite well, so that you've actually got the children in a circle, and then you choose two children on either end of the circle. Normally, I don't have it to hand here, but it could be any pen there. So each child has a pen, and then you play it. So like, this elephant is orange, and they touch orange, and then they just pass the pen to the next person, and then to the next person, the next person as you play. So I find that works really well, especially with the younger ones, so they don't get like anxious, wondering about when their turn is. They can see it's coming around, and it's not really competitive. You're not playing against teams that way. So I quite like that game in that way. Okay, so these are all games where they're generally listening and responding. But hang on a second. These are also ones you can use in that way. But of course, you can hand over and let them start if you've got kids who are, more comfortable with the language and they are starting to produce that, and you can see that. Let them be the teacher, or let them play the games themselves in like small groups or pairs, and it becomes a productive skills activity. Okay, so fishing is another one there. So this is one that they quite like. If you don't know it, I mean, again, I think I'm really cheap. I don't really buy a lot of things, like in terms of props, but I do make them. So this is, I don't know if you can see that. I'll maybe show it to you when I stop sharing the screen. But just a magnet on a craft stick there that I've taped with a bit of string. And then on the flashcards, you put paper clips, and then they can have turns like listening and then trying to fish the flashcards. Again, it's just about the language you use. So that one I think was from another story I used, Peace at Last. So Daddy Bear goes to the garden. So rather than just garden, they've got the full sentence. I did that game the other day with clothes, I think. So it's like, I'm wearing trousers, and they fished trousers, um, rather than just trousers. Bingo is another one, easy to put in the whole phrase there. I think that one's from a story from Head to Toe by Eric Carroll. And then we've got like categorizing tasks, which are quite nice to kind of change the dynamic a bit as well. So it's less teacher led. So those are from the Go Away Big Green Monster um, books. And look, I would say things to them like, okay, find these monsters have got no nose. And then they would find the monsters that don't have noses, put them into categories. These monsters have got blue ears. And they'd put all the blue ears together. And there's so many different possibilities, but like they're categorizing. So first of all, they're listening. They're listening to those have got sentences. But the thing that's helping them identify is the vocabulary. And then they're putting them into the different categories. And then, of course, you can get them to uh, work away themselves and decide on different categories. And you can go around and monitor and use your teacher talk and your teacher language to be giving them exposure to that bigger language, or inviting them to tell. So what's the connection here? And they might say something like white teeth. I'm like, these monsters have got white teeth. So you're just looking for ways to get them to do that. And the good thing with categorizing tasks as well is you're getting them to use and practice those kind of higher order skills. So like classifying, organizing. Okay. Okay, so I'll just move on from that. So yeah, games to increase exposure. But again, they could be production if you're getting them to play in pairs or small groups, playing teacher, which is what I'm saying there, child leads the games. Another one that you're maybe familiar with is rock, paper, scissors. So just in case you're not, I'm going to demonstrate, but I really like that game as a way to get them to work in pairs. So obviously, if they're working in pairs, then they're getting more practice. So going back to my closed vocabulary, say they've got one of these sets, each pair. It's hard, I can't really show you up there if I put it down, but they would go, rock, paper, scissors, 1, 2, 3. And then they're doing it at the same time. Don't know if I can do it at the same time on both hands, right, left side of the brain thing. Let's see, but rock, paper, scissors, 1, 2, 3. So paper beats rock, scissors beats paper. What's the other one? Rock beats scissors. Okay, and so whoever wins out of that after the 1, 2, 3, they take a card and they use the language which you've been practicing with them. So rather than saying just jumper, they could say like, I'm wearing a jumper, or it's a jumper, or I like red jumpers. Whatever it is that you're practicing, and you demonstrate the game, they're more likely to they'll do it because it's a game and it's got rules, and they like to be able to work within the rules. So anything like that. Of course, it doesn't have to be vocabulary cards. It could be for personal questions. So, oh, sorry, I should explain that they would make the sentence, they would win the card, and then they'd play again, and then they'd again make the sentence or ask the question again. Say it was food vocabulary. Maybe they win the card, they see the food item, and then they ask their partner, do you like bananas? Yes, I do. No, I don't. But they win the card. And at the end, the thing I like about that is that it's random. Basically, they're not winning because they're either really good at English or they're not so good at English. They're winning because that's the rules of the game. They just win the card, but they're producing language in the meantime. Okay. So we've got rock, paper, scissors. Let's just go back to Oh, sorry, no, I'm not going to share my screen just yet. Um, sorry, just a little bit of computer. Okay. Um, hippopotamus. So I said I'd share a game that helps include bigger language. So I'll try to explain this. I hope I can explain it well enough. Um, I like using this game with children who are maybe a little bit older, like 8, 9 and up. Um, so actually, there's no reason to say why you couldn't use it with younger children. It's just that that's what I've done. But they would be standing in a circle. So you'd all be standing in a circle, and then you would tell them a sentence, depending on what it is you're working on. Um, let's look at go back to Monkey Puzzle again. So my mum hasn't got uh, tusks. My mum has got a tail. Okay. Um, so I say the phrase, and that's quite long, but I mean, my mum hasn't got tusks, she has got a tail. The person standing next to me says the first word, my. The next person, mum. The next person hasn't got a tail. She had tusks. She has got a tail. But this is actually just side note. When they get things wrong, this is quite nice because they help each other and they remind each other of the word. It's not a test. So they one by one say the words that are in the sentence. When the sentence is finished, that was actually two sentences. Um, when the utterance is finished, the next person repeats the whole thing. Okay, my mum hasn't got tusks, she has got a tail. The next person says hippopotamus, and the next person is eliminated and sits down. Why? It's random, and that's another reason I like it. So I'll just repeat that again. So you would say a sentence, divide the sentence between the number of people that are there. They each say a word. The next person repeats the whole sentence. The next person says hippopotamus. The next person's eliminated. And then, of course, you can help the one who's sat down to come up with the next sentence. And I think it's a really good game. I'm using the examples with words there, but you can do it with all sorts of things. You could do it with spelling words. You could do it with pronunciation and dividing up syllables. If you're teaching with phonics, you can use it in all sorts of ways, but it slows things down and it helps children be able to kind of assimilate like this order of how the sentence is kind of made up. And when when they get used to the game, then you'll see that they're kind of trying to do that work quickly, trying to work out who's going to be the person that sits down next, you know. So I think that's a really good game as well. Um, okay, I'm just going to share my screen again. Um, all right. Okay. So, Optimus. Now, craft. So I said this is something that I've worked quite a lot with because I wasn't using course books, I wasn't using workbooks, and I wasn't really using worksheets. So I didn't really, what I was thinking about was, well, how can I give children the opportunity to practice that language again, uh, but replacing these sort of matching activities and things like that with craft. And I found them to be really useful tools. And the children really look forward to this part of the lesson because it's funny because some of them, in my opinion, and probably your opinion too, are like, it's not that different from a worksheet, but because it involves a bit of folding, a little bit of cutting, then suddenly it becomes something really exciting, right? Um, so there's the motivation and engagement factor there, but essentially they're doing the same type of activities as they would be doing while they're making while they were doing a matching exercise, or they're doing an exercise in their workbooks or activity books. And I've looked for how can there be like opportunities before the craft, during the making of the craft, and after the craft to get that bigger language in there. They do offer a nice change of dynamics as well. So in terms of interaction patterns, so it's not always like lockstep, the whole class doing something together. There are little shifts of attention, even if it's just briefly, and that I think really helps in with classroom management and everything. And it's a useful tool to bring practice outside the classroom. So if you're using a craft in class and you're showing them what they can do with it, then that's something they can take home to their families. The families can sort of see more or less what sort of language they're doing. And if you're showing them what they can do with it afterwards, then they can play with their families at home. So again, increasing the opportunities for language acquisition. Okay, so yeah, they'd have to either listen or speak to complete. So these ones are simple find and stick type scenes, okay? Those ones are, I think, go along with Monkey Puzzle as well. I'm trying not to add in too many different stories, so you can kind of see how this hangs together. But yeah, they would have to listen or ask for the different animals, and then they would stick them in there. But then again, they're listening to whole phrases, whatever you've decided that you want them to be able to hear. So if that's not my mum, that's a frog, or this animal is green, it can jump, it's a frog, okay. And then they collect the frog and they stick it in. In a similar way, marionettes, making puppets like that. So they have to do something to listen for the different parts or ask each other for the different parts, and then they make their marionette. Those are mini books. So they're different. When I make crafts, I usually do lots of different templates. So it depends on what skills you want to practice, which templates make most sense. But yeah, again, these are like I'm showing you here, the kind of cut and paste ones. But you could be doing it with a coloring dictation with black and white ones where they're listening to the whole phrase and then coloring. Okay. So then we've got ones where they're a little bit more dynamic. It's more obvious how they can do this afterwards. So we've got like, things like fortune tellers, flip books, okay, where they've got two different parts. I'm going to show you another example in a moment. And we've got there actually, just to explain, this one at the top is I've used this with Ketchup on Your Cornflakes. It's another book by Nick Sherratt, who's another author I really like. And yeah, so it's a bit ridiculous, but they can make up their own combinations. That's the point with these. There's another one about foods, likes and dislikes. And there's one there with clothes. Okay, and then there's vocabulary sequencing fans. So I've got an example here I can show you as well. So these there are a lot of more obvious things they can do with them afterwards. It's something tangible they can do something with that I think helps encourage that bigger language use. Okay, so before we go on to drama, the last one, thanks for bearing with me. Okay. So let's see. Yeah, well, there's another example of a flip book. So this was one I made up for a song. I was adapting songs. This is a song I adapted with animals and actions. So of course, while they're making, I can't go into all the procedures here because there's just not enough time, but while they're making this, you know, they could be listening to language, collecting things or asking each other for things. And then afterwards, they can play together, can't they? So they can make different combinations. I don't know. Have you ever seen a peacock bounce? And because this is a song, we would sing it. Have you ever seen a peacock, a peacock, a peacock? Have you ever seen a peacock bounce this way and that, bounce this way and that? I'm not going to do the whole thing for you. But yeah, the children can choose the combinations, and I think having something tangible like that is fun. Or it can be guessing games. So they make the combination, and their partner has to listen. So I've got ones like this for clothes, where it could be, okay, the giraffe is wearing blue shoes, and then their partner would listen, and they would try to find the same pages, and like, is this it? You know, and see if they're the same or different. With the likes dislikes one that was there, they could be comparing similarities and differences, like a mini class survey, but they've got something tangible that's a little bit more exciting, to go around and compare with. Um, so these are a couple. Oh, I have the sequencing fans. These are actually hobby ones, but about hobbies, but they could be listening and putting seeing if they can get the hobbies in the same order as you. But again, you're using the big phrases. They could do a mingle activity. So they're walking around the room. I don't know, say you've been, well, these are hobbies. So um, we've got painting. So they walk around the room, painting, painting, painting. I'm painting, I'm painting, I'm painting. Stop. They turn to the person who's nearest to them. And then they could say, so they've got painting. Uh, I don't mind painting. And maybe the other partner says, I love painting. And then you choose a different one. But again, it's having something tangible, I think, really helps. Um, okay, and let's see. So enormous turnip, we had that one. Was that the song? I was talking about enormous turnip. Uh, yeah, but they've got these story wheels. So again, while they're making it, you can be getting language practice in, but afterwards for retelling a story, these are great because they're following along and they can even be playing and telling the story to each other, but again with something tangible. Um, and yeah, I've got lots of things here, but I better not bombard you with too much stuff. Okay, let's see. So I think it's time to move on to drama, perhaps. Okay, so oh, hang on, let's stop sharing that and share this. Okay, thank you for your patience. Okay, right, so drama activities. So when I talk about drama, I'm not talking about any big performance. I'm talking about probably a lot of the simple, the TPR, total physical response activities. I'm sure that you do, like mind games and things like that, but doing those same games, but just making sure that, you're being intentional about your teacher talk, so you're giving them exposure to language beyond the vocabulary item. So it could be, listen and act. So if you were, again, keep thinking about monkey puzzle, but again, if it was animals, elephant, and so they mind being an elephant. But don't just say elephant, like it could be, um, uh, from that, like that's not my mum, that's an elephant, or a different language, so the description language. Um, so where they're listening to what you say and acting around the room. It could be where they say an act. So maybe you're giving um, some kind of description for them to then elicit and guess the vocabulary item, and then they act like that. You could play like a musical statues type of game as well. So where we're surrounded by different things now. Three billy goats. What could we do with three billy goats? Um, hmm, okay, let's see. Okay, the troll. The troll goes up, 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 and down, down, down. Up, 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 and down, down, down. And they could be acting that and then stop, and then they have to freeze in a pose of one of the characters in the story and then guess who each other is. So you've probably got some statues and some people observing, and then you change over. Um, just dramatizing and retelling like a story. So with the flashcard games there, with the we're going on a bear hunt, you're basically dramatizing the story. You're reenacting it in stages as well. So you can doing that. other kind of just drama games where you're acting things out. Like I was at a session on Saturday, and a really great trainer, Yvonne Moore. Um, so she was talking about very young learners, and you imagine you're walking through the jungle. You pick up your binoculars and like, oh, what's that? And use their imagination. You don't even have to have the flashcards there. What's that? Oh, it's a, and that's the vocabulary part. Oh, it's a snake. Oh, a snake. Oh, and then asking them questions. So, and what's a snake got? Oh, a snake, and they might say tail. It's like, oh, yes, it's got a long tail. Is it called a tail, actually? I think I need to study snakes more. um, yeah, getting them to kind of dramatize. I've done before where you've been talking about daily routines. So it's like, okay, right, you get them all like lying down, you're sleeping. Oh, wake up. Okay, right, get out of bed. Get out of bed. Okay, now, what's next? What do you do next? Um, might be different depending on where they live, but maybe it's brush my teeth. Okay, let's go. Oh, we need to pick up your toothbrush, pick up your toothbrush. Okay, now let's brush our teeth, brush our teeth, brush our teeth. What's next? And you're just dramatizing it and that physicality, I think. And again, there's an opportunity to get in more language beyond that individual vocabulary. Simon Says is another one. The Simon Says game. I don't tend to use it using Simon Says. I tend to do it with body parts, with please. So if they hear please, they do the action. If they don't hear please, they don't do the action. So it could be, your simple stand up, please, sit down, please, stand up, no, please. But you can change that to whatever you want to practice, and teaching useful phrases. So one I was thinking about was if you were working with actions, vocabulary, or sports or hobbies, how about I think? So if they hear I think, they do it. If they don't hear I think, they don't do it. So um, I I think we can dance. So they dance. I think we can read. So we read. Okay. Uh, we can jump. Oh, no, I think. Okay. So thinking about ways like you can give them exposure that way as well. Puppet play. I love my puppets. But yeah, it's amazing. Getting them to use puppets, maybe to reenact a story or a role play. And again, there's opportunities, or you're telling the story and they're acting out with puppets. It could be like the craft puppets, like I don't know if I had the slide there, where they have, role plays, masks, that kind of thing, where they've already made it. Or it could be like cuddly toys. Um, and you can add in a performance element if you want to. And I think that provides quite a bit of motivation. So just checking the time here because I know we're short. Okay, and so yeah, integrating into games and crafts is a way. So that's what we had before. Board games, so they land on a square. They don't have to just say parrot. Like they can run around the classroom. I'm a parrot, I can fly, okay? Um, or these are little shopping baskets, so they're doing a role play, but if they've got something tangible, they can have the interaction. Actually, I'm not sure how well you can see it on this, but we've done an activity before where they've completed a dialogue and then they use that dialogue to do the role play and go shopping. But they've got something tangible to stick it in there. So that's a motivation too. Theatre, small world play. We've got three little billy goats there. This other one on the bottom, I think, is from what the ladybird heard. Three little pigs. We've got masks and puppets. And this is just a very short clip I'm going to share with you, talking about the videos motivation thing. So this is just with a small private group, but I do think you could do this in a larger class with as a group work activity. They made a theatre, and then this happened over a series of classes. They'd learned some Halloween jokes. They'd learned some extracts from Halloween songs. And I actually used ChatGPT, like where I was like, okay, right, write a short play that includes, I asked them what their favorite jokes were. Okay, so we chose with including these jokes, including extracts from these songs, and including these characters because we'd made puppets, like stick peg puppets with the characters. I'm just going to play a little bit of it for you if I can, and this will be us coming to an end now. Um, how can I just briefly just need to share the sound? Okay. Second, here we go. Okay, so this should work, I think.
I see a pumpkin patch. Oh, what a sight! Halloween here is a favorite night. Woo! Ah, did I scare you, Mr. Pumpkin? Oh, you sure did. But no need to be afraid. It's Halloween fun. This is Halloween, this is Halloween. Pumpkin scream in the dead of night. Bubble, bubble, toy and travel.
Okay, so it goes on. It goes on. But what I can tell you is that they were really motivated to kind of learn the language that they didn't know. They were really motivated to learn it because they wanted to put on this um, performance. In fact, when I would have been like, "Oh, that's fine," they were saying, "No, can we do it again?" Because they wanted to get it absolutely perfect. So I think that aspect of drama activities can also work wonders for us. Okay. So I think that's me. So thank you so much for being here. It's a real pleasure. And thank you for for listening to me. And if you've got any questions or thoughts or comments, then feel free to shoot. And you can find me in all of these places. So the website there, Kids Club English, that's my email, fiona@kidsclubenglish.com. And I'm on all these social platforms. I would say with Facebook, I don't use my personal profile as to share teaching ideas, but I do use my Facebook page and I share ideas there. So that's like Kids Club English as well, if you search for that. Okay. Um,
Thanks a lot, Fiona. That was amazing. Really. I like some of the ideas that you've mentioned, I tried to apply before, and like the way you explained them though actually motivated me to do more. I like to explore more with the kids. Thank you. That was quite
well,
enlightening. Thank you.
there's things that like I've done before and then I've forgotten about, then I've tried again, and like just experimenting with little changes. It doesn't have to be amazing, right? Like, but yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that's fun. Thank you.
A
It's a real
lot.
pleasure.
There weren't any questions like in the chat box because simply the session was absolutely clear and you had these lots of ideas and you explained everything in details. So I think if anybody like would want to ask you about anything, they will definitely contact you on the
Yeah,
socials that you shared.
that's brilliant.
Thanks a lot.
Okay. Thank you so much.